It's a real privilege and a pleasure to be speaking at this event where I see many old friends, particularly on this session. Taniguchi-san, with whom I have interacted many times over the years, Sri Nalapat, Srinivasan, so many others, and getting to see the faces of new friends whom I have, whose writings I have read. I would like to thank the Indic Researchers Forum for putting together this event. I think it is at an apt time when there are many developments which should cause us to take a look at what is, in my mind, unarguably, the most important relationship that Bharat shares with any other country, which is with Japan. The topic I have been given to talk about is the Bharat-Japan relations and Prime Minister Modi's contribution in elevating this bilateral relationship. There are two aspects to this. The relationship between India, that is Bharat, with Japan is very long-standing and has weathered the test of many challenges. But it also goes without saying that the heavy lifting done by Prime Minister Modi and the developments that we have seen within the last decade under his leadership, and also the leadership of late Prime Minister Abe, has been absolutely phenomenal, has been absolutely stupendous. After World War II, India was one of the first nations with which Japan signed a peace treaty. We have had a steady and friendly relationship, but it has been low-key. Over the past few years, it has got ratcheted up into very high gear for a variety of reasons. I think the most fundamental reason is the underlying shared values that two democracies share. The two most important democracies in Asia are India and Japan. And apart from those values, there are, as the introduction mentioned, many centuries of cultural connections and friendly relations. But what has happened also is the shift in geopolitical considerations has helped the entire world refocus on certain challenges which are very concentrated in the Indo-Pacific region, but they impact all of Asia and they in fact impact all of India. The proverbial 800-pound gorilla in the room, of course, is China. Now, I have had 2 decades of track 2 discussion experience, which was referred to in my introduction. Although one aspect that was not referred to, which I would like to add, is that my track 2 experience has also been very heavily connected with Japan. I've had the privilege and the pleasure of leading many all-party delegations to Japan and hosting many Japanese delegations in India. Have had the pleasure of making many friends across the political spectrum in Japan and interacted with those who have helped shape this relationship, such as Taniguchi-san and many others. Now, the experience I have gleaned from these track 2 is that in the early part of this century, there was still a misguided belief that China, having benefited from the global order, China having benefited by entry into WTO and playing by the rules, would help extend that paradigm. But in fact, that has not turned out to be so. For, in my experience, for more than a dozen years now, increasingly more and more countries are coming out and specifying and explicitly talking about their concerns, because China has been going beyond all norms of global coexistence and geopolitics. They have been stepping on the toes of every neighbor and even far-off countries. India, of course, has faced severe hostile aggression from China, But Japan has also faced threats. So has Vietnam, the Philippines, Indonesia. You can go on and on. And the kind of environment this has created is a great deal of uncertainty and challenge to the global economy. And in this construct, the India-Japan relationship specifically and the revived Quad, four major democracies with great interests in Asia, the US, India, Japan, and Australia, are very key to dealing with these challenges. And this has coincided exactly during Prime Minister Modi's tenure in India and to a large part the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. So if you look at the very significant steps that have been taken, it is under the leadership of these two great leaders that the bilateral relationship was elevated to what has been described as special, strategic, and global partnership. It is not just something that has a bilateral impact or only on Asia or the Indo-Pacific, but the entire world. And this is recognized by other nations as well. If you look at bilateral trade, the bilateral trade between India and Japan is $20 billion, which is significant, but it is far below the potential. And it needs to be boosted significantly. If you compare this, for instance, Japan's bilateral trade with China, now almost a quarter of Japan's imports are from China, and nearly that amount are its exports to China. Well, whereas the imports from India to Japan are under 1% of the Japanese imports and under 2% for Japanese exports. So this is, you can see this as an underperforming area, but I see this as a huge opportunity because, as I had mentioned, for many decades, although we had friendly relationships, it was very low key. It is only in the last decade that it has become high priority, and thus this potential can be tapped extensively in the coming years. And we are beginning to see how that is happening. So, for example, Japan has emerged as one of the largest investors in India with an FDI of the last 1 year amounting to about $17 billion. Now, again, this is something that can grow a lot, but $17 billion compared to what India used to attract only just a few years ago is a very significant number. And in any case, the total FDI into India has jumped dramatically. Also during this period, during the Modi government shaping India's destiny, India has jumped dramatically on the economic front, having become the 5th largest economy in the world and the fastest growing. And the Prime Minister has thrown down the gauntlet by saying that in his 3rd term, India will become the 3rd largest economy. India is also the largest recipient of Japanese ODA, developmental assistance. And there are, of course, very significant flagship projects such as the Delhi Metro Rail Corporation and the Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed rail projects. Now, these are flagship because not only are they large, not only are they structured in a manner where true aid and friendship go hand in hand in terms of concessional rates, in terms of the best technologies, but also these are changing the very destiny of India. India is transforming, and one of its greatest aspects is the huge surge in infrastructure, and the projects that we do in Bharat with Japanese cooperation and help are truly cutting edge and flagship. Now, similarly, the northeast of India is very key to Japan's focus on the Indo-Pacific and its focus on the Bay of Bengal and Northeast India industrial value chain to promote growth in this region. The strategic aspect goes far beyond the Quad. For example, Japan was only the 2nd country with whom India has set up a 2+2 ministerial dialogue after the US. The Quad, of course, is critical, but as I keep emphasizing, both the bilateral and multilateral relationships between Bharat and Japan are crucial for the global order, not just for the Indo-Pacific and Asia. One key area that needs to be referred to is China's thrust on the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, we have seen in India strategic concerns about being encircled by the so-called string of pearls. Now, although that has been scoffed at by China over the years, the reality is we are seeing it right on our doorstep. What has happened to Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, what is happening with Gwadar port in Pakistan, what is happening with Chinese interests in our surrounding areas in Myanmar, and if you go across the Indian Ocean, on the African coast. These are areas of concern. And it is a matter of significance that Japan and India have both not participated in the BRI. We, of course, have many concerns with it. One of it is that area which belongs to India, which is Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, is being forcibly put into the BRI corridor, which again violates global norms of sovereignty. So as an alternate to that, Japan and India have been working on various infrastructure projects which go beyond India, beyond the immediate internal requirements of India. So the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor is something that has been worked on as an alternative to BRI. And separately, India is also developing other infrastructure corridors, not with Japan, I'm talking about to other parts of the world, such as the IMEC, which has recently been announced during the G20, which will connect India through the Middle East to Europe, which is a very, very significant development that is going to take place. Now, I have personally been watching from the sidelines and participating in Track 2, participating in helping shape the policies from the BJP's perspective and with our government. And I can say without the slightest hesitation that this level of shifting of gears would not have been possible without the personal commitment and leadership provided by Prime Minister Modi and the late Prime Minister Abe, who developed a very close, strong personal bond that went beyond the requirements of the leaders of two key nations coming together on geopolitics. Japan was the first bilateral visit that Prime Minister Modi made outside of the immediate South Asia region when he took office back in 2014. Both the leaders had very personal connects in visiting each other's own areas and homes. Although it is extremely sad that we have lost such a statesman as Prime Minister Abe. I had the privilege of meeting him several times during the Track 2 delegations. And it's a huge loss to both the India-Japan relationship and to the global order, shaping of the global order. But the good thing is, the strength of that bond is continuing. Prime Minister Modi continues as he repeatedly gets recognized as the most popular elected leader in the world. Recently, the Pew Global Survey, just a couple of weeks ago, ranked him at 80% approval rating, which is astronomical. India is succeeding beyond imagination. Just a few years ago, when we got hit with the COVID pandemic, the world expected that India would collapse. It didn't have the wherewithal to deal with such a challenge, which came after 100 years. Not only did India manage, one of the best tackling of COVID, one of the least levels of mortality and disruption. If you look at how India came up to tackling this, it ran the largest vaccination campaign in the history of humankind in the shortest time, and helped well over 100 countries, about 200 countries with vaccines, and thereafter with financial aid. Most economies have suffered very badly after the pandemic. India has also been impacted, but India has handled it far better than most countries, and we have been of immediate help to countries facing collapse, such as in our immediate neighborhood. So this is a new India, and this new India is underpinned by a confidence of an India that can do. It is now recognized that India has a key role to play in tackling not only its own developmental issues, but tackling global challenges that all nations face. And in this, as I have said before, our relationship with Japan is absolutely second to none. Although friends do sometimes have differences of opinion and there are challenges. So, for example, the war in Ukraine has caused us to take a nuanced stand, which is not exactly in line between the two countries. But that has not affected the friendship in the least, because close friends understand that it is not necessary that you have to agree on each and every issue 100%. As long as the underlying values, the underlying objectives, the underlying relationships between the key actors are close and strong, then every challenge can be tackled. And so, as I come to the conclusion of my comments, if we look forward, where do we stand? I think, again, I will say the immense credit that I give to Modi ji and to Abe-san is fortunately being institutionalized. It is not just that everything is dependent only on personal relationship. That is the trigger. The personal relationship was the trigger to bring about this. So the cooperation between India and Japan is a symbol of how two democracies face with extreme challenges. Now, Japan faces the kind of threat from hostile activities of China that are of concern. And we have, as I said, we have faced that kind of hostility on our doorsteps with bloodshed and with loss of lives. So this is not just something theoretical. This is something that we deal with on a regular basis. Japan is also evolving. The Japan of 2023 is different from the Japan of just at the turn of the century. It recognizes that this is a world order which is shifting away. It is not bipolar, it is not unipolar, it is multipolar. And the certainties that existed after World War II till only a few years ago are no longer certain. And so in terms of defense cooperation, in terms of high technology cooperation, such as Japan's cooperation with India on semiconductor, on building a semiconductor industry in India is very, very critical. And the kind of exercises that we conduct in cooperation, the naval exercises and other exercises, these are extremely critical. So I can go on and on, but I think I have made the point that this institutionalization that has taken place is still a work in progress. So the last thing I will say is that some of us who have served in parliament for many terms, some of us who have been in government, have developed relationships across with legislators in Japan. I think that needs to be strengthened further. I think the relationship between government to government is extremely strong. I think the business and investment relationship is just getting stronger every day with the great Japanese presence in India and an increasing importance of India in the Japanese economy and industry. I think in terms of people-to-people connect, there is a lot, but we need to do a lot more. I think there is scope for a lot more people-to-people connect. There is a scope for a lot more on the policy front, for example. The effort that is being done today in this event is symbolic of the many such efforts that are going on. This is a particularly good one, and this will keep the engagement going and being very strong. But I think the areas that we need to focus on more to institutionalize this relationship deeper for the longer term is more people to people and more legislator to legislator. The other aspects of the relationship are taking off in a very good way, and they just need to be cheered on and encouraged. With that, thank you very much for this opportunity. I look forward to hearing Taniguchi-san, and all the best for the rest of this event. Thank you.